Good evening. First, I want to start by thanking everybody for coming tonight. I especially want to thank everyone on the panel for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be part of tonight's discussion about our community. Everyone is here tonight because they care about our community in one way or another. In August of 2023, the Morristown Police Department held our first ever community forum. We decided to host this conversation due to the increase in criminal activity within our community. The rise in thefts and trespassing complaints were having a direct effect on our local businesses and on our community in the whole. During that forum, we heard from multiple community members, and I heard the words frustrated, scared, and no accountability, just to name a few. Law enforcement can't solve these issues by ourselves. We need the help of our community, our social service partners, and our legislatures. With that said, tonight's forum is a little different. Besides hearing from just law enforcement like last time, we have a group of panel members representing our legislature, state's attorney's office, and healthcare. I look forward to hearing everyone's questions and ideas tonight as we move towards a path forward. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator tonight, who is Lieutenant Todd Baxter with the Morristown Police Department.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, and thank you again. Welcome to our second Crime and Concerns Forum. My name is Todd Baxter, as Chief just said. I'm currently the Detective Lieutenant of the Morristown Police Department. I've been asked to be the moderator, good for me, of tonight's forum and discussion. I've been a part of Morristown Police Department for just over a year. Prior to my time here, I retired as a Detective Lieutenant last year in charge of the Northern Vermont Major Crime Unit, specializing in homicides, officer-involved shootings, and cold case, and that was with VSP. I was 21 and a half years there. I'd like to add that for 22 years, I've been an active member of this local community, and I care just as you do. So I have an interest in what happens here on a personal level. So it means a lot for all of you that have showed up, and we appreciate this. I'd like to give a special shout out to some of our elected officials that are in the audience. And we have Representative Daniel Noyes, Morristown Select Board members Don McDowell, Chris Palermo, Richard Craig, and Laura Streets. I understand that Representative Melanie Carpenter is here with us. Assistant Judge David Iacovoni is also here. Thank you for attending this important event. This is being streamed live on Green Mountain Access TV. We just found out that it's going to be streamed live, so sorry if you didn't get that notice, because we just got it too. It will be recorded, and the recording will be put up on the Morristown website. This is not an official meeting. This is more of an informal, so we don't have like the governing bodies or anything. You're stuck with me. But we do have a couple of guidelines that we are going to ask of you. And I'd like to go over them, and they're really simple. Please be respectful of one another and of our panel. Please raise your hand, and I will call on you. You can either come to this mic, you can state your name if you wish, or we have a mic that can be passed around. So if you don't want to come up, we can pass the mic to you. The camera will pick you up better if you come up front, just so you know. Please ask one question at a time or share one idea with the panel. Depending on the time, we may circle back, so get your best question ready. Please be direct with a question to a specific panel member. And if it's an open question, then say so, and we'll just move down through whoever wants to leap up and maybe give their best try at it. Please don't interrupt. We may not be able to get to everyone tonight. You can reach out to us at any time, though. You may not agree with all of the thoughts or ideas or the information that is given here tonight. That's okay. Our differences are what make us great. In the interest of time, I ask that we stay on task. We have a narrow focus tonight and limited time. And that's dealing with crime and the effects it has on our community. I know we'd all like to talk about school taxes and other things with our reps that are here, but we have to stay on task, and I ask you to adhere to that. We share in your frustration. We're looking for a path forward together. Thank you in advance for respecting this process. Now I'll have the panel introduce themselves and then back to me. Panel members, please limit your introduction and opening remarks to 3 minutes or less. Doctor?
Hi, I'm Katie Marvin. I'm a family doctor. I've been here 15 or so years. Also live in town and get to go to this school. So I'm here to talk about, or to be a resource for anybody who has questions around substance use disorder treatment and the options that we offer in our community, which is actually quite a lot. This topic is important because so many of the crimes that we're talking about tonight have substance use roots to some extent. I made a few cards, but I can't use both hands. So when I think about the way I would frame this, it's important to think about maybe a case that would make sense just really quickly. So I had a patient who presented a couple months ago who had overdosed in her apartment or in somebody's apartment east of here. And people that she was with used 7 doses of Narcan to revive her. They did not call 911. She did not go to the hospital. But she showed up in my office a couple days later, very scared. And we have developed a program through our medication-assisted treatment team where we prescribe buprenorphine, among other things, to patients in our county by primary care providers. We've created a RAM program, which is rapid access to medication. So even if she's not a patient, and even if she's not doing great in many, many ways, we would see her within a day or two. She starts on medication and she gets integrated into our process, which involves social work. It involves help with any legal resources. It involves, in some cases, housing, in some cases, food, medical, and then employment. And it goes from there. But as you know, the first stages are just basically like the ABCs of CPR. The first couple weeks is just keeping somebody alive. But it's extremely successful. And so I just want people to know about that, if nothing else, that we have this resource. Up at the front, we have cards that you can pick up. Anybody can call. Anybody can ask questions about it, and I can be tracked down to answer questions at any time. This patient's doing really, really well. Got into treatment immediately, was started on Suboxone sublingually, and then about 10 days later, we switched her, at her request, to Sublocade, which is an injectable version of Suboxone, which lasts about a month. And we've been doing so much Sublocade that I think almost half my panel is on Sublocade right now. It's really, really effective, and they don't have the daily dose, which is really nice, and it destigmatizes their life a little bit. They don't have to go to the pharmacy. Anyway, I could go over my time and go for a really long time, but basically when I think about the 5 tenets that I would think are important, I wrote the little cards. One is treatment. That's kind of what I do, and I have a lot to say about that, but you know. Number 2, here we are. Law enforcement is an extremely important part of this solution. Prevention is really important, and we have people in the audience, specifically Jessica Bickford here with Healthy Lamoille Valley, who are experts in prevention, talking with teens. Mental health, also important, and this is such a fundamental part of recovery, is digging into what's going on with that person's mental health. So it's not just about the medication, assisted treatment, it's about addressing the mental health challenges that they've been dealing with. And then recovery. We also have partners here who focus on recovery. We have a lot of options in this community for people. I want you to know that we've communicated this to hopefully enough of our partners where, in my mind, any door is the right door. So if somebody really wants help, they should be able to call any one of these resources and be attached to any of the others. And then the last thing I'll put a plug in for is Narcan. And you can get free Narcan at the Recovery Center, at Jenna's Promise, at the vending machine outside of the clinic in Johnson, or from me. So saves lives, and this, as exampled by this patient I saw a couple months ago, doing so well, starting her life over again, and not contributing to the continued use of substance use in our community.
Thank you. I'm Aliena. I am the interim state's attorney for the county, and I have 2 sons, and We do shopping here. We had karate lessons here when my kids were little. We were just talking about this community is my lifeblood. And as most of you probably, how many people in the audience are frustrated right now with their community and crime? All right, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Well, we're all up here. We're pretty frustrated about it as well. One example I wanted to give you is when I was in court the other day, and we had this one defendant who had conditions of release in 3 different counties for crimes that he was being charged with. And he kept coming over and from Caledonia over to our county. And our law enforcement spent about 50% of their days trying to track him down, bring him into court. They brought him into court. He got released again. It's what we like to call catch and release program. So they saw him 2 days later doing the same thing in our community. So they called me up and they said, what do we do with him? I said, bring him before the judge right now. So we just kind of asked forgiveness later. Instead of asking for permission, we brought him right in front of our judge. We said, look, he's here again, judge. These conditions of release are not working. He's right back in our community. He's breaking our laws. And so she basically said to us, I can't do anything, because the crimes that he is being charged with in our county are not serious enough to really have effective conditions of release. We're very limited in what we're allowed to do. And we said, well, Judge, what do you want us to do? You want us to bring him back to you again tomorrow? Because we know he's going to be here. And so she actually went on her computer and she reached out to the other 2 counties, to their judges, and said, hey, this is your problem. You need to deal with him. Otherwise, he's going to be right back here. So she, our judge right now, Judge Morrissey, is phenomenal. And she sees the web that we have in our community. It's not just each judge. It's not just each leader in our community. It's all of us together. It's all of us communicating together to solve a problem that is not easy to solve. It's very complex. We have laws that need changing that are not allowing us to keep our community safe. We have penalties that are laughable. And our law enforcement is understaffed, and they are working every day and every night trying to keep all of us safe. But they can only do what our laws allow them to do. At the state's attorney's office, we can only do what our laws allow us to do. The judges, even the judges, right, who you think is the most powerful people, they can only do what our laws allow us to do. I've had judges in court 4 times over the last 2 weeks say to me, you know what, Ms. Gerhard, this person is a danger to the community, but I'm not allowed to put them in jail prior to their trial. So what do? We talk to our other people in our leadership. We talk to each other and say, hey, do you know this person? What are they doing? How can we help them? What's their family situation? Is there a narcotics addiction that we need to treat? Because if we don't treat that, they're just going to keep reoffending when they get out of prison, if they actually do go to prison. So it's this complex web of people that you have in your community that we're all talking together. We have our legislators who are here helping every day, who call me up and say, hey, I have this person on this road and they're really frustrated about a drug dealer. Can you come talk to them, or what can we do for them? And we have people at the Restorative Justice Center, Probation and Parole, at the Child Advocacy Center, law enforcement, and we all talk together, we communicate. We work as a team to better serve you. So what we need from you is to keep the communication open, to talk to us, to talk to your legislators, and just know that we're just as frustrated as you are, and we hear you, and we see you, and we want to do better for everybody. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roger Marcoux. I'm the sheriff here in the county. I've been here since 2001, and I've been mostly in this community since 1980, working in law enforcement. I'm going to speak a little bit more later on really the crux of the matter here, but I just want to tell you that I'm approaching tonight from the standpoint that there are a lot of good people. I've been part of the opioid forum for the last several years with Dr. Marvin and Jessica Bickford and a bunch of other people. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to get help. But at the end of the day, my job, and I believe those of us in law enforcement's job, is when people are not willing to get help or they're not ready to get help, we have to protect the public. And that means businesses as well as individuals that are being burgled. So that's my focus tonight. And it's not, if it sounds like it's someone in law enforcement that doesn't want to help somebody, that's not the case. If somebody wants help, I'll do everything I can to help them. We stood up a homeless shelter. You know, we're part of the partnership with our treatment and recovery folks out there. But at the end of the day, these businesses are getting broken into, a lot of you folks here tonight. And at the end of the day, as a government, we have to protect our public.
So I'm Jason Luneau, the Chief of Police for Morristown. Following the introductions, I'm going to get up and speak for about 10 minutes about what's going on in our community and what we're seeing. So for the sake of time, I'm going to pass it along to Rich.
I'm Rich Westman, and I am the senator in the county. There is a lot of people talking about the laws that need changing and things that need to happen in the legislature. And what I really want to convey to you is there are people in the legislature listening on both judiciary committees in the House and Senate. I know there's an issue of shoplifting here. There's a bill in the House Judiciary Committee, 534, which deals with the issue of misdemeanors and the way people get treated if you shoplift are under $900. There's bills in the Senate Judiciary now that are talking about expedited ability for landlords to kick tenants out that are dealing in drugs and causing problems in the community. There are, and I'm sure later in this evening we're going to get into those, but these are all issues that are out there and the legislature is listening now. And not everybody's going to agree on all of these issues because a lot of the issues, and I think we're very aware of that, have come out because of the addiction problems we have. We've put tremendous resources as a state into our addiction programs and what we're doing, but it's now spilling out all over the community. And in some cases, to support what Roger said, we do have to protect the public. And that's an important thing that we need to do. And I think people are beginning to listen.
Good evening, Representative Saudia, LaMont, Lamoille, Washington District. So that's Morrisville here, Elmore, Worcester, Woodbury, and a small part of Stowe. I am a former PA graduated from here about 25 years ago, parent of students here, and graduates of here. So I'm deeply embedded in our community. I work very closely with Lamoille Health Partners, the United Way of Lamoille County, the recovery centers, Jenna's Promise. I am a peer recovery coach and many other roles and titles, which mean whatever. As many have already said, you know, there are many issues happening in our community right now. I'm not going to monopolize time so that we can actually answer your questions, but that is who I am, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having good conversation and dialogue tonight.
Hello, my name is Ember Power. I'm the assistant manager of the crisis team for Lamoille County. I am also not going to monopolize your time, but I wanted to share that our resources are spread very thin for the county, and mental health is a huge issue right now. The crises are happening all the time, and we are spread very thin. I think that we will speak more about some of our programs a little bit later, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about mental health.
Can he hear us?
Judy, can you hear us or no?
Can I think you're on mute. There you go.
Are you talking to me?
It's all on you.
Okay. Hi. I was having a little trouble hearing. I'm Representative Avram Patt. I'm the other representative from the Lamoille, Washington District. and I'm not an expert on this subject, so I am here as much to listen and to learn and to hear people's concerns as I am to offer solutions. I do know, I'm very aware of the increases and the changes in criminal behavior throughout the Vermont, in Morrisville, in Burlington, in some of our smallest towns, and in some ways, and I'm sure not all ways, but in some ways, this is something that is happening across the country if you read the news. And I know that at least some of it is affected by the change that has happened in illegal drug use over the last number of years, with different drugs, different access to drugs, and things like that. So I'm here mostly to learn along with everyone else, and thank you for putting this program on.
Thank you. All right, we'll get started with the main event. It's worth noting that I think we're over 100 attendees tonight, so give yourself a pat on the back for coming out and sharing this experience with us, because it is very important. And make sure you contact your representatives. Your representatives for Morristown are all here. So this is who they are. Then we're going to start off with Chief Jason Luneau, and who is going to share the Morristown Police Department State of the State.
Okay, is that working? Okay, perfect. So a few things tonight that we're looking to take away after the meeting tonight. We want to understand the challenges that we face here in Morristown. We get the rising crime, we get the drug use, we get a lot of people that are frustrated. We're going to look at some data that we put together for the police department in 2023 of what we're seeing and how that impacts us. And then a path forward to, at the end of this meeting, hopefully we can have some ideas through the legislature, administratively, of how we're going to move forward, how we're going to tackle this problem. And that's going to be done not by just the police, but everybody in the community, essentially. So this talks about our staffing. Some people may not be quite familiar with what we have for staffing at the Morristown Police Department, but we are currently full staffed on paper. That includes 10 patrol officers, two of those are sergeants, 1 detective lieutenant, the chief, 2 desk officers, a K-9 Knox, and our detective. Currently, we've been facing some staffing constraints. We do have 2 new members that we hired. Both are in field training. One will be ready to work by themselves, hopefully by April 1st, and then the other one will be ready to go by July 1st. And then we have one out on a medical leave from a work-related injury, and then we have another one on military leave. So it's been over the last 6 or 8 months. We've pulled it together with some overtime and some other people filling in for the administrative side of the house, such as the chief and the lieutenant and the detective filling in on shifts to help make sure we have 24/7 coverage. You'll note the mental health embedded position is currently vacant. So last year we secured funding with Lamoille County Mental Health to hire an embedded mental health specialist. It took us a few months to find somebody, and in November we finally found somebody, and they started at the end of November, and they lasted for about 4 weeks, and unfortunately they moved out of state. It was a great program. It is still a great program. It worked out very well, and we are actively trying to fill that spot right now. It's 2023, we just were short of 5,000 incidents, 4,987, and 303 arrests. What's noteworthy on the arrest is that 104 of those are repeat offenders. So over a third of our arrests are the same people. And you're going to hear a lot about that tonight, I have a feeling, before we're done. To break some of those down, the areas that we see that we're frustrated with are the conditions of release. We had 19 arrests in 2023. 12 of those were committed by the same 4 people, so about 63%. And the other big one is thefts. As we all know, the business community was hit hard last summer, last spring. And honestly, it just happened over the weekend. So it's not like it has stopped since 2023 stopped. So we're still seeing it, but it's an increase, 115. But the same thing, 44% of those were committed by the same 17 people. So that's noteworthy. Trespassing, that's the other issue we're seeing. If people are getting trespassed, they're not supposed to go into Price Chopper. Well, they violate that, they go to Price Chopper or different other businesses or residences. That's up to 103. Same story. 29 of those 103 were actually arrested. The other 85 of those incidents, or 83%, were committed by the 24 people. So 24 people committed 85 of those trespassing complaints. This is just some data on the last 4 years, and you'll see the incident numbers did go down by a few hundred, but if you look down below, the traffic stops dropped by 300. I get a lot of calls or emails about, hey, can you go up on Stagecoach Road and do some motor vehicle enforcement? We never see a cruiser up there, or Randolph Road, or wherever it may be. And we take motor vehicle enforcement very seriously because we want everybody to be safe on the roadways. But right now, we are dealing with criminal arrest almost all day long. So we don't have the time to go sit on Route 100 and do traffic enforcement or Stagecoach Road. Our time is spent dealing with a person, arresting them, then you come back and you do hour and a half of paperwork, and then by that time, usually there's another call waiting for you to go to. So we want to try to improve this where we can get those traffic stops back up around 1,000 to make sure our roadways are safe. Going down through that list, you can see, the theft increased up to 115, the suspicious circumstances up to 744, and again, the trespassing more than doubled from last year. So drugs. Probably hear a lot more about drugs tonight and substance abuse. I mean, there's no secret. A lot of our thefts are because of people facing some type of drug addiction or substance use disorder. We do take that seriously. This is something that we can't solve by law enforcement ourselves. But what we have been doing in 2023 is just concentrating on the folks that are bringing these drugs into Vermont from out of state. We're seeing them come from Connecticut, Mass, New York City, Philadelphia. So over the last year, in 2023, we seized over $300,000 of street value worth of drugs that were destined for Morrisville. And we also had 5 firearms involved in those drugs. Now, this just wasn't the Morristown Police Department. We have a great working relationship with the Sheriff's Department, Stowe Police, and some federal partners as well, and state partners. So it's a big team effort. So transports. We put this on here because last year we lost the funding for our ASAP program, which was run by mental health. And if somebody was intoxicated, we dealt with them at night, and they weren't safe to be out on the street, we would call Lamoille County Mental Health, and they would come over, they'd screen the individual, and as long as they weren't combative, they could go to a facility up near the hospital and sleep it off in the presence of a worker, a mental health worker. Well, the funding to that program was cut, so that closed. So now, if we run into that situation, we need to bring that person all the way to St. Johnsbury to the jail, and that's where they sober off. And between that and the increase in criminal arrest, our transports numbers increased 112%. And when we do a transport, it means 2 officers on overtime likely to make that trip up to St. J and back. So after the forum back in August, there was some feedback that we got about how do we call you about a tip, or is there a tip line? There wasn't. There now is. So on our website, which was newly redone, you can go to the police department section and you can click the crime tip form. And you can fill out your own tip and submit it. You don't have to put your name on it. You can put as little information as you want, or as much as you want. But the community is really our eyes and ears out there. So sometimes just a tad bit of information may go a long ways with us. But that program is up and running, and I'm hoping that it will get used. So we laid out 4 identifiable concerns that we have as law enforcement. Court orders, conditions of release. This has already been spoken about a little bit tonight, but we will arrest somebody, cite them into court for 6 weeks away, so they'll go to court a month and a half away, and they'll be released on conditions of release. They will go reoffend, potentially, and if they do, They get arrested again, they get cited back to court, and they'll get released again on conditions of release if it's just, for example, a misdemeanor retail theft. So essentially, these court orders, I'm not quite sure what they're doing because they're reoffending, they're going to court, and they're just getting released. Delay in time until prosecution. We have cases out there that are almost 3 years old, and they're just, granted, we had a COVID backlog, but the longer time there is before somebody can get through the court system, the worse it is for them, the worse it is for us, the worse it is for the criminal case. We really want to see that time shrunk down. So when we cite somebody in court, they're in court, they get through the process within a short period of time, and it doesn't take years. I mean, retail thefts, misdemeanors shouldn't take that long. An acute emergency medical treatment facility. You know, this is something where, like, the ASAP was good for people with alcohol, but what do we have for people with drugs? We have nothing here. And we would really like to see some type of an acute emergency medical treatment center where we have somebody under the influence that wants to get help, and they're not in a good state of mind when we're dealing with them. There's a facility we can bring them to with people there that can really harness them, get them in, pointed in the right direction, and hopefully get them into some type of further treatments. And the other thing is just people not willing to participate in the criminal justice system. We'll deal with people, like I've said, multiple times. They're in and out of the system, and that's the way it is in their life, and they're not willing to take that extra step to try to get them back on their right path. And the court isn't holding them accountable to. So some partners. Like I said, this isn't a law enforcement that's going to come in and solve this problem and make everything better. We work with a lot of partners. And there's a list here on the screen, and as I look at this list and I look through the audience, I think it's a safe bet that there is representation from all of these agencies here. A lot of these folks don't even live in Morrisville, but they took the time tonight to come here, listen to our concerns, and it shows that they're vested in making this, helping us find a path forward in solving this problem. And that's it.
So some of you you might have saw that we polled the town and asked for questions in advance. If you had some questions, we got some good responses. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to run through some of those questions, and we're going to go right down. So each panelist will get a question that was submitted, and then we're going to open it up. So with the first question, it goes to Sheriff Marcoux. Sheriff, you recently participated in the governor's 10-point crime reduction initiative. You were asked to participate as a panelist. You were asked to speak specifically to repeat offenders and recidivism and its challenges. Could you share with the audience your thoughts?
Thank you. All right, so I wrote a statement, and I'll try to get through it as quickly as I can. But I was specifically asked to sit on a repeat offender panel. And this is after doing some research and everything. I think some of this is going to dovetail with Chief Luneau. But I'll read it to you. And, that better? Yeah. Okay. All right. Repeat offenders are contributing to criminal victimization and re-victimization, the undermining of the quality of life in the communities that we serve, the eroding public confidence in our judicial system, and the increase in fear that people have for their own safety. These recurring issues are being caused in great part by repeat offenders and their flagrant disregard of property and decency of rights of others. The revolving door takes up time, resources across Vermont's law enforcement, judiciary, and mental health systems. In a September 26 incident in Lamoille County, the owner of a small business experienced a burglary and vandalism where his business sustained over $22,000 in stolen and vandalized property. The business owner additionally experienced a $36,000 loss in business while closed for repairs. The business paid $1,000 in business insurance deductible, which then resulted in a $16,000 increase in insurance premiums. This was the third time this particular business was burglarized or vandalized within 14 months. On two separate and previous occasions, the business sustained $83,000 in stolen and vandalized property, and yet another $23,000 in a subsequent incident. Each time paying $1,000 deductible and substantial loss of business during repairs. The collective value, vandalized or lost revenue, exceeded $130,000 for this one small business alone. The investigation led to repeat offenders being identified and arrested. They had existing conditions of release on earlier charges, and they were released on conditions of release. On December 3rd, 2023, there was a burglary into another small business, Quick Stop in Lamoille County. And the perpetrators, who were caught on video, are well known. They were identified as some of the same individuals who committed the earlier burglaries and vandalisms at the previously described business. The damages and loss or stolen property for the store exceeded $12,000. At the time that I wrote this, I said the store owners are in the process of selling their business because of their repeated and ongoing burglaries. Well, they sold that business. During subsequent investigations, it was learned that, excuse me, one of the suspects is identified in 170 law enforcement incidents and or involvements in a 10-year period between 2013 and 2023, and has been charged with a felony and 22 misdemeanors and 16 convictions during the same time frame. A second suspect is identified in 44 law enforcement incidents between 2014 and 2023, has been charged with 2 felonies, 1 misdemeanor during the same time frame. The third suspect is identified in 72 law enforcement incidents between 2012 and 2023, and has been charged with 5 felonies, 3 convictions, 10 misdemeanors, excuse me, with 10 convictions during the same time frame. A fourth suspect is identified in 193 law enforcement incidents between 2014 and 2023, has been charged with 1 felony, 18 misdemeanors, and is a suspect in many other crimes at the time frame. And a fifth suspect is identified in 30 law enforcement incidents between 2014 and 23, has been charged with 1 misdemeanor, and is a suspect in many other crimes during that same time frame. Although victims often have insurance, what isn't taken into consideration is the emotional toll on the victims and their employees, or their loss of business, the insurance deductibles, and the ultimate increase in insurance premiums that are a result of the actual crime. Each time the repeat offenders are caught and face new charges, new conditions are ordered, which include common sense conditions such as no new criminal charges, no victim harassment, etc. However, the new conditions are disregarded as quickly as the old ones were. By the time the offenders appear in court, they have amassed a host of criminal charges that are often lumped together, plea bargained to misdemeanors, and in some cases dismissed, or the offenders sent to diversion. We have recently seen expungement orders coming through for criminal offenders who are still very active and who continue to offend through our region. Retail theft and larcenies represent a great example of merchant victimization. Often offenders steal $900 or less in merchandise to ensure their crime isn't a felony. They may repeatedly steal from the same establishment even after receiving a trespass order from the business. Merchants across the state of Vermont are reporting thousands of dollars in merchandise stolen, or in some cases, small business owners are reportedly closing their doors. A local grocery store employee stated that they had lost $65,000 in one department. And an offender admitted to a probation officer that he'd stolen $60,000 in merchandise from another business. Both of those businesses are in Morrisville. Drug violence is fast becoming the most dangerous threat to the public safety of Vermont. We are seeing more and more out-of-state criminal drug dealers and suppliers making their way here, bringing gang violence and the mentality with them. In our rural communities, we find the number of gun violence incidents increasing and raising serious concerns. As a result, our local drug distributors are quickly adopting the same tactics as the out-of-state drug trafficking organizations. It is important to note often that people distributing drugs and people suffering from substance use disorder are one and the same and refuse treatment. These same individuals are often involved in sex trafficking, gun thefts, straw purchases of guns involved in violence, and most always repeat offenders. We must create and impose meaningful accountability standards and related consequences if we wish to have a positive impact or influence in deterring the continued increases in homicides and violence associated with those criminal activities. Hardly a week passes without news of yet another gun violence incident occurring somewhere in the state of Vermont. They are happening in larger metropolitan areas as well as our rural communities where there are less law enforcement resources available. In many cases, existing laws are not utilized or criminal violations are never filed. The creation of new laws will only be helpful if they are evenly applied and used to achieve a more timely and effective and meaningful consequence for criminal conduct and behavior. As a law enforcement official, I believe that I not only have the responsibility to enforce the law, but an equally important responsibility to protect the public. Civil rights and the rule of law are the foundations of our democracy. In my opinion, the victims in this state are, it is my opinion that the victims in this state are most often not afforded the same voice as offenders. We must work collectively to come up with a consensus regarding the balance of justice for offenders and victims alike, regardless of the severity of the crime. The successful interdiction of a budding criminal career at its inception is the key to preventing a repeat offender. The last thing I'll say here is that this is the second forum, which I think Chief Luneau and Detective Lieutenant Baxter have done a terrific job along with the department. But after this second meeting here, it's going to be time for us to try to figure out what we're going to do. And Senator Robert Norris, who is in the Senate Judiciary Committee, has agreed to meet with Chief Luneau and myself with taking back some of what we learned here tonight, because the committees of jurisdiction are the judiciary, both in the Senate and the House, and that's where things have to start changing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. The next question goes to Interim SA Gerhard. When reading the court reports, it seems there are many repeat crimes, DUI for instance. They have very light consequences. Many of the crimes, when they are multiple crimes for one person, are dismissed. Not knowing what the intricacies are of the court process, my question is, what has been found effective in countering repeat violations? Are the sentences being provided actually a deterrent statistically? And if you needed me to repeat anything, I can.
I'm too short for the podium. So, all right, so that's a great question. And you've heard about the frustrations. You've heard about how conditions of release are really not doing much but creating more paperwork. I know that I've talked to members of the legislature. They are listening. They are trying to revamp the whole conditions of release VCR system so that the penalties are quicker, because we need accountability. Without accountability to the court and to the community, these criminals are going to keep offending because they know they can. So one of the first things that we're working on is to tighten up the VCRs, violations of conditions of release, so that a person can't accumulate 10, 20, or 30 of them while they're out on bail. Right now, we can only arrest them and put them in jail for violating conditions of release under very small circumstances. So I have filed countless motions to revoke bail and get them put in jail until their trials. And I've been turned down 9 out of 10 times. For one offender, it took 4 different motions for the judge to listen and put her away. She was supposed to be under 24-hour curfew with a custodian. She kept running away, kept running away. We had, I think, 5 police departments in 2 counties trying to catch her. In the meantime, she tried to run over a law enforcement officer, and she was going down the wrong side of the street in her car, 70 miles an hour. She could have killed people, and we could not get her locked up in prison. So she's caused a danger to the community, to our law enforcement. She just pled guilty to all of her charges last Friday, and she's facing up to 10 years in prison. It took too long. And that's what's happening. There's no accountability. Judges are letting people out again and again. And so to answer the question, is it effective? It can be effective. In our county, we've reduced our backlog from 1,000 cases to just above 400 in less than 6 months. So that's number one, so your case isn't sitting there for 1.5 to 3 years going to trial, so that there is some accountability. The second thing we've done is thank you, is worked with all of our partners to ensure a more efficient prosecution with law enforcement, with our different community partners, with probation and parole, who are dealing with people every day and trying to keep eyes on them as well. So that's another way that we're trying to handle it so that it's more efficient. The legislators have just, I believe, passed a bill, right, to make retail theft crimes cumulative. So you're not rearresting the same person who's stealing under $900. Now you can charge a felony. And with a felony means increased bail if they're at risk of flight. With a felony, it means increased chances for real punishment. After 3 felonies, we can charge someone as a habitual offender, which means they are looking at up to life in prison. And then we have a way to hold them in jail before they go to trial. So these are all really important tools that I've been using. I've been trying to get people to plead guilty to at least 3 felonies if they are a multiple offender, because then I know the next time they're mine. And that's the only way right now in our communities that we are able to get people to plead guilty, is you offer them a carrot with a low minimum and then a really high maximum. And then they reoffend and then you've got them. It's frustrating. It shouldn't be like that, but that's the way it is right now. And we're working to change that with our legislators so that they understand what we're dealing with every day. Did that answer it? Okay, thanks.
Senator Westman. What is the best way for the public to be involved in the legislative process other than voting? How can a community with many concerns like ours effectively address said concerns with a legislator? Otherwise, the best bang for our buck.
So, what we don't know, we don't know. Can you hear me now? What we don't know, we don't know. And all of the people that are dealing with these issues at every level have to be out there telling us what they're seeing and what they're facing. If you're Heather Hobart and you're working with the restorative justice program, what's the barriers for you to do your job well? If you're the state's attorney, what's the barriers that you're facing to as you do this and as you do your job? I didn't know that the ASAP program had been cut at mental health. Every time we go as legislators to mental health, they're stressed out with salaries and losing workforce and that, but not specific issues brought up around it. So when I hear from you tonight, as I go back to Montpelier and tomorrow the governor puts in his budget, as the Department of Mental Health comes in to present their budget and talk, it certainly will be a question that I ask about the ASAP program and what's going on there. If you're Roger and you tell me that you're losing deputies because you have a 30-year retirement instead of a 20-year retirement, I've been working with Roger on that issue now for a number of years, and it looks like this year we're going to be able to solve that issue, or at least move in a different direction, so he can get his deputies 20-year retirement, so he isn't losing deputies to the state police and to other forces all over the place. We've got a backlog in cases, and even at 400, that's a lot for a small county like this. I know now that we need a deputy state's attorney in this county to at least help us through the backlog, maybe longer than that. I don't know that, and I don't know how to push for that unless I get the numbers, unless I get the background. I can easily go to Annie Noonan and John Campbell at the State's Attorneys and Sheriff's Association and say, as we're beginning to advocate for more money in the budget to do that, my county needs help. I don't know that unless you come up and you tell me that. I certainly know that the $900 limit that Roger talks about, and we've got people out going in and shoplifting and staying under the $900 limit and doing it numerous times, and they're getting off. I certainly know now that H-534, which is in the House, that's moving to the Senate, is something that I will look across the table at Dick Sears, who's the Senate Judiciary Chair, and I'll say, and I sit across from him in the afternoon in appropriations, and I'll look at Dick and say, this is an important bill, what are you doing? I don't know what I don't know. So it's important for you to send me an email, contact us, tell us what the important pieces are. You know, I stood with a landlord not very long ago talking about somebody dealing drugs out of their apartment. There's now a bill that they're working on in Senate Judiciary, S-58, and what that would do is expedite evictions for people that are doing illegal stuff within an apartment. But I have a face in mind. I have someone that I can call up and say, what do you think? I need that help, and that's how you can be helpful to those of us, whether it's Saudia, whether it's Dan, whether it's Melanie. We don't know how to be effective unless you help us.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Patt, can you hear me? Okay, this one's for you. What is your position on bail reform and why? For example, the 2018 bail reform bill capped bail on misdemeanor offenses at 200. There's a current bill in Legislator S-27, which looks like it will abolish all cash bail. Do you have thoughts on this?
Right. I actually looked up the status of S-27, which did pass the Senate late March, I believe, of the previous session of last year, and came over to the House and was referred to the House Judiciary Committee. And I looked that up, and they have not yet taken it up. It was referred to their committee, but they've since that time have not held hearings or anything like that. And I will be asking the chair of the committee what their intention is, whether they intend to take that up. But in terms of my position is somewhat mixed. The bill that did pass in 2018 dealt with people who had committed a misdemeanor that was eligible for expungement, which means that it's I guess a low level enough crime that it could be it would not stay permanently on someone's record. And my the motivation for passage of that bill was that there are at low level, what I'll call lower level crimes, there are people who committed the crime and cannot afford bail, and there are people who can for the exact same offense. And there seems to be an inequity there that someone can end up sitting in jail for a period of time because they can't afford bail, and another person who did the exact same thing gets out. I think that's the motivation. What's my position? I guess I would have to say I have mixed feelings. I understand that that motivation, that for things that are classified as relatively minor, and I want to emphasize that for the victims of those crimes, nothing is really minor. But for relatively minor crimes, there seems to be inequity if someone can end up being stuck in jail for a period of time and someone else who does the same thing hasn't. So I did vote for the bill in 2018. In terms of the Senate bill that came over to the House, I'm going to be following that pretty carefully, and also talking to members of the Judiciary Committee. As I said at the beginning, I know a lot about some things, but I am not an expert on these issues, and I really need to hear from the members of the committee who have begun taking testimony, not on that bill specifically, but on general on the increase in crime levels and what's happening and how that's affecting our communities.
Thank you. We're going to add a little bit to that about bail. Bail can be confusing. It is in our Constitution, and Roger was going to talk a little bit about it, but we were on the same. Go ahead, Roger. Just
So,
for
first of all, as much as law enforcement would like to see it, bail is set up just to guarantee people's appearance. So it can't be used as a punishment, to lock somebody up because they're continuing minor level crimes. Homicides and everything, you can put somebody, you can incarcerate somebody or lodge them pending the proceedings. But for lower level crimes, unless there's a constitutional amendment, that's the only way that we're ever going to be able to use bail for anything other than an appearance to ensure someone appears. So I don't know.
Yeah, so when you're talking to your representatives and you want to talk about bail, just educate yourself a little bit about that, knowing that it cannot be used as punishment or for public safety. Now, conditions of release that are set by a court is a whole different animal that's not in the Constitution and can be worked on. And I know that in the judiciary, they're probably going to be hearing this. And the fact of the matter is that when we have a judge that sets conditions on Monday, the person's back in front of them on Tuesday and has to say, because you've committed a misdemeanor, you have effectively rendered my conditions that I told you don't do this yesterday ineffective today, because it was only a misdemeanor. So with that, you should be asking for conditions to mean something. And that becomes a court order. Whole different thing than bail, so don't confuse the two. Sure.
So unlike the constitutional amendment that would be required, as we talked about, your state representatives can amend the law. So right now, if you're charged with a felony and you violate a condition of release, it's a misdemeanor. If you violate it 500 times, it's a misdemeanor. There's no quicker way to get you in front of the court for violating a condition of release. I think most of us have had children at one point in our life, And if you try to punish your child 6 months down the road, is it going to do anything? No. If they keep doing the same thing over and over again, and the risk is worth more than the punishment, are they going to keep doing it? Yeah. So that's what's happening in our community. We have felons who have been charged with 20 VCRs, and they're still out on the street. So what we need, in my opinion, is an escalating scale of VCRs. If you're charged with a felony, then you violate the conditions the judge sets. That's a felony. If you do it 2 or 3 times, then the penalties are escalated, and you're brought before a judge within 24 to 48 hours. That would be what I would want to do. If you violate a judge's conditions, then you should be held accountable immediately. Because what does that say for our judicial system? If nobody cares what a judge says to you and they just keep committing crimes. So for me, it's really important to have the escalating penalties, to have a quick turnaround, and to have accountability in front of the judge. And that's something that we can do as a community, and that our legislators can bring our voices to the judiciary, the judicial session, and let them know. That would be a huge help. It would be much easier than amending our Constitution.
And in one of the slides that we had, we talked about people that are like, we can't have just a system that, you know, allows you to say, I'm not going to participate in our criminal justice system. Because effectively, that's what happens with this certain group of people. They're like, I don't care, I'm not going, it doesn't mean anything anyways. And everything just keeps getting compounded and compounded and compounded. So that's what we say when we're talking about everybody participating. All right, Representative LaMont. Can you share with the audience your position on H72, an act relating to harm reduction, criminal justice response to drug use, otherwise known as safe injection sites for the lay person? Pros and cons, and probably speak to rural versus urban.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, I have conflicting feelings about that, but feelings are relevant, in my opinion. What I did when that came up was there was testimony that happened in committee, and I myself decided to speak to partners whom I work with, as well as other folks in the community, and get thoughts, opinions, and ideas, because it's not just about what I feel, it's about what's best for the community. And so I had to do my due diligence and figure those things out. What I learned via testimony that took place in the House, as well as debates on the floor and in communication with constituents and community partners and community members, as well as people in recovery, is that there were mixed messages. And so overall, I will say this with my whole chest, wholeheartedly, I do not believe humans are disposable, and I will always support recovery and preventative measures to save someone's life. In that same vein, I do not feel that this avenue is best served. Does it meet the need? It's a pilot. So, you know, it's supposed to be in 2. They went from 5 to 2 locations. I had a lot of questions, a lot of concerns around safety, around resources, around accessibility, around utilization. We have the Vermont Cares program, which is a harm reduction, you know, program that is already in existence. And so I felt, is doing another tool the best methodology? And I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. What I do know is that we have to do better to meet the needs of folks. For me personally, if we are asking what I feel about it, I feel a better use of resources, so to speak, would be to address people's needs. I feel no matter what we do, we can eliminate whatever drugs, it's going to be something else. People who are trying to escape whatever they're trying to escape will find something to use. So my opinion is we should work towards making sure we are not creating a society that people need to escape from. That's the only way, in my opinion, to address addiction. I don't know how it will be utilized, how it affects our community. and the people in our community who are struggling and living in active use, because as I said, accessibility, neither of the sites would be here. So I don't really see how that infringes upon our community directly immediately, and also these things are not going to even take place immediately. So these will take time to happen. It is a pilot to test. And, you know, I do have some more questions, but feelings aside, like I said, I support recovery all the way around. There's no question about that. Is this the best avenue? I don't know. Is it another tool in the toolbox? Yes, it is. So I don't know how that lands, but I'm willing to see if it'll save lives.
What's the bill number again?
H72.
It repeals the crack statute. You're a co-sponsor. Why don't you give an honest answer?
Well, let's let her continue her answer. Thank you.
That was an honest answer, and I don't know. Can you elaborate on what you're referring to? I answered the question directly asked of me. So if you have a further question, I would be happy to answer.
We have to raise our hand, and I need to call on you.
That's all I was doing, reading the purpose of the bill. In your own writing, you co-sponsor.
Not my writing, and yes, I did co-sponsor because, as I said, I support saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you. I will move on. Ember, this one's for you. Ember Power. Do you feel an acute medical detox facility would be useful in this area, and why?
Well, I'm really glad you asked me that, because I think we've all heard a little bit about our ASAP program closing. And there's a few things I would like to say that will lead into the answer to that question, so bear with me. Public inebriate programs across the state are closing. They are not financially sound. Our program was in a deficit that was getting bigger and bigger. Many of our managers met with the Vermont Department of Health, the substance use division, many times for a year before our program ended, and we got nowhere. We applied twice, several grants to expand our ASAP program so that we could do medical detox, so that we could be a short-term stay for those that are waiting to go to treatment but have nowhere to wait, because we don't want them waiting in the emergency room. That clogs that up. We don't want them to have to go to corrections. Our numbers for ASAP on the whole, overall, we were diverting about 70% of people that were intoxicated with the police involved or the emergency room involved. We were diverting them from going to corrections. It was very successful, but it wasn't financially sound. So, do I think that our community could benefit from that? Yes, we tried. We've asked for money to do so, and we've had no success.
Thank you. Dr. Marvin, and then we're going to be opening up after this, so. What current treatment options do you see for people who are resistant to treatment and are tied up in the criminal justice system? You have any thoughts or ideas on that?
Sure. Sometimes you have to just ask why. Like, what is the underlying reason why they would not be interested is the biggest thing. Everybody's going to have a different answer to that. They may have had a bad experience with it in the past. They may feel stigma or shame from their family or friends. They may really not understand their options. They may think they have to go to an inpatient facility and they just can't get out of work or leave their kids for that long. So a lot of times we're breaking down a lot of these myths, saying, look, we can do this now. You're not gonna have to pay anything. You're gonna feel better tonight. You don't have to leave work. You can still take care of your kids. So a lot of times we have to just figure out like what the underlying driver is to that reluctance, because oftentimes it's very correctable. I can definitely think of patients who we've done all of those things and I still feel like I'm doing a lot more work than they are. And I don't understand why they don't want treatment. I mean, it cannot be fun to be a repeat offender. Like, it's not a great life. And in some cases, when I see the paper, I know a lot of the people. I've met them many times. And there are definitely times where I think this person, honestly, really needs to either be incarcerated or they're gonna die. So there's a place for all of this, right? We have some new resources that might be interesting for some people. Like, some people really don't like taking a medicine every day. And as I mentioned before, there's a shot that I've really become a fan of. I don't get any kickbacks from it, I promise, but I wish I did. But it's really working well for a lot of our patients, and it's a lot less, it's very low risk. They don't have to take a medicine every day. They can't divert it, can't overdose on it. It's like in the body, it's working all the time. That plus meeting the underlying mental health and just psychosocial needs is so important. If somebody doesn't have a place to live or doesn't have any food, like, treatment just is like lower on the priority list. So one thing I'd like to just remind everyone is there are a lot of people in recovery who once may have had these records, may have had these situations, and were literally at the basketball game an hour ago, doing great, taking care of their families, in treatment and recovery, maybe haven't told anybody because there's some stigma still attached to that, but really doing well. And it's important to think about, like, a lot of cases are going really well. But a lot of times the first thing I do is just try to ask why. Like, what's the barrier? What's going on that's preventing this person from getting the help that I think they know they need? They just don't. But I can think of a half dozen people right off the top of my head who I'm surprised are still alive.
You can keep that. Okay, just before we open this up, because we have our first question back there. He raised his hand, so he's going to get to talk about H72. I just want to say this. Since our last forum, we've had a lot of interactions with our public members, business members, and people have said to us, like, people that we're dealing with on the regular that are in our shop, they're asking, like, did something change? Like, what's going on with you guys? You're, like, really cracking down. And things are tightening up in Morristown. And I thought that was really good. And what I actually think it is that they saw how much the community cares. There are, anecdotally, it feels different. People have said that. So I think there is a positive shift. I don't know how long that'll last, folks, but it does feel that way. I had a business owner that I talked to this morning. I said, hey, you coming tonight? And he's like, I don't know if he's here or not, but he had said, do you guys feel like it's slowed down? Because I haven't had the trouble that I've had. And I really, really do think that it has to do with you folks that are sitting there and your friends if you're talking about this. Because when you're talking about it, you don't want to stick out. And I just thought I'd share that with you because people are actually talking. So that's a good thing. Okay. Would you like to address that, the crack statute? Because I'd be happy to, since I rudely interrupted. It's okay. Thank you. My name is Bill Moore. I'm from Morristown now. Oh, sir. You're directing?
My name is Bill Moore. I'm from Morristown now. I just recently removed here. So the reason I brought that up was because I would love to teach everybody in the room how to spend 5 minutes and learn how to track and spot every single bill that every legislator sponsored. It's a very simple process on the website. I did it on my phone while she was answering the question, and I did it to prove a point. That bill has multiple elements, and that bill also repeals the definition of trafficking in cocaine derivative substances. If you're caught with more than 150 grams of any of those, you're automatically charged with a higher crime called trafficking, which the state's attorney, I'm sure, can address. So I did that to point to the fact that the bill is not about a pilot project only. It does a lot of things. And in order to find out what they're doing down there in Montpelier, you really need to just spend some time on the website and find out what your legislators are sponsoring. I also looked up the average salaries of some of these judges who are letting people go. Our current judge here in Superior Court is listed at making $257,000. If they're not doing a good job, then at judicial retention, which I believe is what, every 2 years, Rich? Is it every 2 or whatever it is?
I think it's 6.
What is the review, and why are they getting so much money and not having their butts handed to them and tossed to the door? So if they're not putting people in jail and they're not catching the backlogs and they're not imposing conditions of release and they're not revoking bail and putting people in prison for reoffending, then why are they judges? So I would like that part addressed.
Right, yeah, I thought it was 6. You want to take a little bit of a shot at? I think it really goes back to, let me help you out here. I think it goes back to exactly what we said, and thank you for bringing it up, because the whole point is, folks, you're here as an informational meeting. The first time that we did this, we didn't bring our representatives in on purpose, because we wanted to see how you as a community would respond to what is actually happening. And then we wanted to come together as a community and starting to sharpen our voice, because that's what you need to do. You need to educate yourselves. You need to come together as a community. And the senator stated, if I don't know, then I don't know. And that means that we are not doing a good enough job at articulating how we're feeling as a community and getting it to the right information. Because the question is that you need to say, Senator or Representative, I understand that you're under appropriations and you're not on the judiciary, but we have these issues that are associated with crime. And the judiciary takes that up, and how often do you interact on our behalf? That's a must. Is that fair enough? Okay.
Like the judges go on rotations every 1 to 2 years. So our judge now, Judge Morrissey, is the first person since I've been here who tries to hold people accountable as much as she can. She's the one that put this woman who was running over our law enforcement behind bars. She's the one that has gotten our backlog down from 1,000 to just above 400. She's the one that in the middle of a sentencing will look at the defense and say, well, why'd you do that? You know, you terrified this person. You stole from this family business. Why'd you do that? And she will call them to task. So I just want you to know that if we can keep her forever, I would love that. If you have any pull in that, sir. But just so you know that she's done an amazing job. When you guys show up at hearings, I pointed out, she sees it. She sees people. She sees our community activists, our community heroes who just don't give up. Even though the defendant hasn't showed up 10 times. They keep coming, and they let her know that they care. And that really makes an impression on Judge Morrissey. So she's really doing, I think, a phenomenal job for our county.
Thank you. Okay,
Hi, I'm Melanie Carpenter. I'm one of the newest representatives for Lamoille County. And someone just brought up the fact about knowing where the bills are. And one thing I would say as a new person to this whole system of trying to find bills is make sure you're on the most advanced edition of it. Sometimes they change dramatically from how they're introduced. So like Act 72, or H72 rather, has many iterations. So just make sure that when you're looking on the website that you have the right version, and sometimes that can be tricky. So you can also ask your representatives to help you find that if you're concerned about one. So just wanted to put that out there, because H72 is different now than it was when it went, and when it goes to the Senate, it will come back differently. So I think that's just helpful for the dialogue so you have the best information.
thank you for clarifying that. I had one up here first, and then we're going to go back.
Good evening. My name is Barry Bernstein, and I'm actually on the border between Calais and Woodbury, Washington County, and Lamoille. But I wish it was all black and white and easy to understand. I've had friends who had kids who are addicted. You feel for them. I've been on my road 50-some years, 5 years ago, we had a double murder, drug dealers. Somebody came from Massachusetts, shot them both, burned the house down. And I think if I came from Hardwick coming home and being a good Samaritan, stopped to ask, and it happened to be the guy who did the job, I wouldn't be talking to you. But my house was broken into, grand larceny, $100,000 worth of jewelry. The money meant nothing. It was my mother and grandmother's wedding ring, so it was sentimental to me. That person got probation in Lamoille County, was up for sentencing, didn't show up in Orleans County. Same thing happened in Orange County, in Washington County. No communication. And that person's still on the street and keeps getting brought in. And I don't understand why the probation in Lamoille County, why they had 3 years probation in Lamoille County when they had outstanding warrants. So it's not black and white. It's not all police. We need more judges. We need more police. We need something that can lock people up where they can get treatment. It's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of coordination. And it's not simple, but it's affecting more of us all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed? Oh, we're going back next, but the microphone's right there. We're here.
Martin Green. Just a few comments and some suggestions. It just appears that there's a real double standard, almost an antagonistic relationship between the legislature and law enforcement, and actually the state's attorney's office, where it's got to be terribly frustrating for law enforcement officers and agencies who are putting their lives on the line all the time to capture criminals and to bring justice. And yet I'm seeing, as Bill referred to before, a lot of these new bills being sponsored that decriminalizes prostitution, drug dealing now, safe injection sites, and even making it harder for landlords to evict tenants. So it seems like the legislation is working against what the state's attorney and law enforcement is trying to do. So a couple of suggestions. Let's do whatever we can, as the state's attorney had mentioned before. If we need to make an amendment to be able to, the suggestion I have is if someone is caught and arrested within a 24 to 168 hour, 1 week period, they just go to jail. And that's it. The conditions of release are you get arrested, you are going to jail, and you're going to stay there. And to stop that behavior. The other suggestion is, I think it should be mandatory that all our legislators should have training with Siri Rooney and victims advocates to really hear from victims what the impact of crime is on them and their families, and to really pay attention to that side of what's going on, how it's really affecting them and our communities, in order to get a really good perspective on that, and hopefully to influence the legislative decisions that you make. Thank you.
Would anybody like to respond in any?
Thank you. I'll start. I'm sure some others might have some things to say, but again, the problem is going to be jail. And we've got a difference in philosophy at the legislature. We've got those folks that want to try to help people and correct their actions and what have you, and they firmly believe in that. And then we've got people that want to throw away the key. So there has to be some balance there. But, at the end of the day, we live in a democracy, and we just can't shoot each other if we don't agree, with the way things go. And, I worked in I worked in a country for 5 years that's the way it was. If you went, whoever had the most guns got their way. So that's going to be the challenge, is trying to convince anybody to incarcerate somebody, even if they've got, 10 failure to appears or what have you. So that's the whole key to this, and I don't have an answer.
So just to that end, this is what we're talking about, and I'm going to bring you back to it again. We talked about this. This specific group of people that are choosing to not participate. That's where I believe, and most of us believe, the focus needs to be. If you looked at the slide, this is just 2023. If you looked at that, you can see that we have a specific group of people who, it gets even higher. I mean, I don't have the numbers, but I'm going to guarantee you they are addicted. And that's a sad state of affairs. However, if we need to adjust our accountability in this community and in our state, that's what you do. You focus on these people who have been told you need to come to court. That's what a court condition does. Doesn't matter if you have a misdemeanor or not. That's what it says. But they're like, I don't care. And they tell us, trust me, they tell us to our face, give me the paper and let me go. I'm not going to jail. And they're out there doing it all over. And that is extremely frustrating to us, to the victims. Do we have the will to hold people accountable? And that may mean jail. But here's the point. Nothing isn't working. And that's effectively what's going on. There is no accountability for those that are choosing to not participate. Remember that. There are people that go to restorative justice, and restorative justice is a great thing when you're willing to participate in it. There is no mechanism to hold a certain faction of these people that, as the numbers indicate, this is intelligence driven. This isn't me just talking. This isn't anybody up here talking. This is what is happening. That's where the focus needs to be. The conditions can be dealt with on the legislators' purview. They can do this if we get and articulate where we want to see the changes and what's happening to us. And I hope that there's enough conversation going back and forth that they can help us and say, this is how we can get there. I need you to do this. I need you to come and testify in one of the hearings or the bill reviews. They're taking testimony, but you're right. Sometimes I wonder if they're taking the right testimony, because there does at times seem to be a conflict. But remember, we're not all the same. That's what makes us great. However, this is a room full of people with many beliefs, and you're all here because you're frustrated, but know what you're frustrated about. And we're telling you, you're frustrated about this small group of people that are not participating. And our government does not seem like it has the will right now to deal with it. But because there's so much talk about this is going on across the state. This is in Rutland. They're having these meetings and they are fed up with it. The governor had his 10-point crime reduction initiative. This has gotten the attention. Don't pick up your foot. Keep it on the gas. Next question. Ed, I know you were.
Ed Wilson from Morrisville. None of these problems that we're talking about tonight are new. We've seen all this getting worse. And now I think it's getting so bad it's coming to a head. And there's a solution. There is a group of 181 people in this state, and the majority of them either like or don't mind the crime, the drug dealing, the break-ins, and all the other things we're going through. And the reason I can tell you that those 100, the majority of that 181 people don't mind it is because they haven't changed it. It's been going on for a long time, folks. Those 181 people are 150 legislators, 150 House members, 30 senators, and 1 governor. And if you want changes, you have to make the change there. That's the only way that we're going to see any change. You either have to make them toe the line. They're the only people. They're the only ones who can change us. No one else can do this for us. They have to do it. The police and prosecutors are understaffed. They need more money. And even when criminals are arrested or convicted, we need a place to put them. I had a state's attorney tell me that he had spent the better part of a Friday trying to find a bed for a person with mental problems. If he can't find it, who's going to find it? The other thing that I'd like to know is who set $900 for a limit that you can steal that much until you get in trouble. We could all go over to Hannaford's tonight and get get $800 worth of stuff, and I'll bet it would be cost effective. That we would be better off even after we were arrested. And the other thing is, I would like to see the legislature start passing laws that affect criminals. Instead of banning guns, banning different things, or making laws that only we will obey, you would get a lot of help from all kinds of groups across the state if you would make mandatory sentences for guns, using guns in a crime, mandatory sentences for stolen guns, and do something with those people to get them off the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to? Nope.
Good to go? I'll just speak real quick to the 900. It's been 900 for at least going on 20 years, but it's to the point where the people that we are arresting know that they can shoplift or steal $850 and end up with a misdemeanor, so it's no secret to them as well.
So what you talk about is focusing on those people that are the real problems here. And I hate to tell you, but we can't buy our way out of this problem. When corrections cost almost $100,000 for everybody in jail, we can't throw everybody in jail. But what we can do is make those people that are the real problem, we can have consequences for those people, and we need to do that. And that is where we have to concentrate, and that's where people like myself need your help to do that. You know, I go back to, if you get a DUI, 80% of the people that get their first DUI never show up in court again. And we shouldn't be spending all of our time on that. We should spend our time on the people that are repeat offenders. Really, here in Morrisville, those people that are shoplifting, it's not a huge group of people. Those people need to be held accountable.
Sorry, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to address one thing about the legislature and the process and that indifference that you're feeling. And first of all, I just want to name that I'm a new member. I've only been there a year. It took an extended period of time for me to even learn how to navigate how things work. Second, I just want to name that I don't think people understand the reality of what happens in there. And so the Judiciary Committee hosts a lot of things, as well as Corrections and Institutions, 2 separate committees working on 2 different things. I would highly recommend folks sit in on committees, and there was a question of who's testifying. You can find that information out on the website as well. And you can also contact the chairs if there's something that you would like to testify on and see if they will hear you. I think there's a real miscommunication between, I've only been here, like I said, this is my 2nd year now. But what I'm learning is that the disconnect, the tension, we're operating within the systems that we can. And I don't think that that is named often enough. And when we talk about accountability, and we talk about it's a lot of finger pointing, when in the reality, we can only operate within the confines of which we can, which is our committees and then our votes on the floor. As it was stated by someone, there's 180 members, and so things have to pass through both chambers. The process in which we operate is complicated, and I would strongly encourage all of you to come down, sit in on committees, sit in on the floor, and listen to how things operate and navigate, because you may soon learn that it's not as simple as one person. Any one person up here cannot address this. And as you keep addressing, there's a certain, if we are addressing people who continue to do the things, that's the only way to address the issue, because it's not the entire community. And some of the things that have been brought up have been set in place. This is not a new problem. As it was mentioned, it has been increasing over the years, and some of the things that have been spoken to have been in place for quite some time. So can we work together to change that? Sure, let's try, but it's gonna require that interaction, communication, and collaboration between community members, our legislature, our law enforcement, our municipalities, and everyone to address this issue. It's not about you. It's about us together to help improve our community.
Thank you. We had a question right here. Yep. We can bring the microphone to you. Thank you, Andy.
Hi, Evelyn Throne, Marsville. On the prevention idea, I certainly would like to know what, locally, who can we talk to encourage more funding for the ASAP program? Because if that can help some people who are in that program, and it can also free the police, which it sounds like they're overwhelmed, they're frustrated, I just applaud them up one side and down the other. I was never that aware of it till I moved here, and I'm really appreciative of how we can talk to them. Even though they're so busy, they still will talk to people. Second, on the other prevention idea, there was a couple mentions of restorative justice. I became aware of that program. I don't know if it was started, but it was like in the country of Rwanda, which had a civil war, like, you know, with people slaughtering their neighbors, and they couldn't take the whole country and put them in jail because they were, God knows how many of them were all guilty of even violent crimes. So they had to figure out a way to get people to understand the humanity of their neighbor and how to change. So that was the restorative justice. Maybe that could help some people who were in the earlier stages not become these repeat offenders, or if they've come to a point in their life that they are willing to change, that they can help themselves and others through that program. Is there enough money for that, and how does it work?
I see Heather's right here, and I'm sure she'll talk. Here's what I will say about the ASAP program. I can guarantee you after tonight and after the conversations that I've had with Jason lately, that as soon as mental health comes in for their budget, there will be questions asked about that. I can guarantee you that.
I'm good. Do you want to talk, Heather? So
I know, yeah, because I know that Hank has, he had his hand up first and then you're second, but I didn't know if you wanted to, you can address restorative justice right after he's.
Go ahead, you go first. All right. So my name's Hank, I own Chuck's Bikes, and I was a victim of one of the repeat offenders, and all I can say to everybody is the gentleman that was complaining about the 181, you could be vigilant and help participate, because I participate every day. I walk out of the shop and I see things and I try to give them clues to what I see, and I hope it's helped, because I was in the courtroom when one of the offenders didn't show up, and the judge put a $5,000 bail on him, and I went and found him in 7 minutes and called the police department, and he was picked up and brought to jail. So really, everyone here is got to be part of it, and I would like to see also on the housing rental thing also something to come up with the Airbnbs, because I had my stolen bike in one of the Airbnbs from a user that called and left us a message with a picture of the bike inside the house, called the police station, and one of the officers went up there, scared him away, and then I was driving back to the police station, almost got run off the road by one of the trucks, called the Stowe Police Department, and told them that the truck was full of stolen goods and probably a bunch of drugs, and that police officer said, okay, we'll see what we can do, when it probably could have been a big drug bust. So Airbnbs are being housed, and that's where vigilance has to be watched by everyone.
Thank you. I just want to say, before Heather, thank you, Hank, for all that you do. He's got a direct line, and we love it. But to that end, we ask you, see something, say something, but that does not mean that you're required to. We don't want you to put yourself in a position that's going to jeopardize your safety or make you feel uncomfortable. That is not what we're asking of you. Do what you feel you can do, and we will be much appreciative of it. I just need to say that, okay? Heather, you're up.
Thank you. I guess I can't see through my reading glasses. First, like to say that I'm glad I followed after Hank, because there's a lot that has happened in the last 6 months that's going well here. And I know that there's a lot that's frustrating about that. I'm thinking about it in terms of like a pyramid, and we're really focused on that pyramid at the top of those really frustrating people that are causing a lot of harm in our community, and we're rightly so focused on them. And at the same time, there's a lot that's going on in that lower part of the pyramid that you are all part of, that the folks on the panel are all part of, that we're doing really right, and that we've gotten right. And some of that is reducing the court backlog, that Aliena is personally responsible for, that the judge is personally responsible for, and that is lending credibility to our system. So what Todd talked about with offenders coming up and saying, like, what's changed? That's partly all of you responding and talking about it, business owners and community members. It's also our system saying, we are responding quickly. And that really matters, right? When you have a parent that responds quickly, as opposed to, like Aliena said, waiting weeks and weeks, that is what matters. So there's a lot, actually, since August, that's gone right. So I just want to like focus on that as well, that there's still a lot of tweaking that needs to happen, and there's some improvements that have been made by everybody in this room working really hard on this problem. So let me just introduce myself really quickly. I'm Heather Hobart. I'm the Executive Director of Lamoille Restorative Center. There is a restorative justice organization here in our county, and I'm lucky enough to run it. We've been around for 4 decades, and over the last couple weeks, I've talked to a lot of community members from Morristown, and some of you are in the room here. And what I've heard to a person is that each and every one of you want an individualized response to make sure that this community is safer. And you want to make sure that victims are heard and that people are responded to and met with accountability. And that is a really fair request to make. And I think that the tools are here for us to be able to do that. So a lot of you know us by our old name, which is court diversion. So some of you have had kids, or you might yourselves have been through court diversion because we've been around for 4 decades now. Last year we served 388 people. We have a 90% success rate with kids and an 82% success rate with adults. We served 71 victims of crime, and we collected restitution. If we don't get restitution from people, we send them back to court. So we're in the courthouse multiple times a week. We're making calls to people. We are working with victims. We're in our office. We're holding people actively accountable, and we're making sure that victims' needs are met. We're also really working hard on mental health and substance use treatment, which is the other part of what we've talked about here. So we're doing both of those things in our office all week long, every week. And we have a system that works really, really well and has been working well for a long time. And it integrates our prosecutor, our judge, victim services, treatment and recovery, and lots of other providers, many of which are in the room here. The 3 things that I think we need more of, and our community needs more of, as we see it, is we serve those nearly 400 people with less than 3 staff, which is a joke, to be honest with you. It's a really hard thing for us to do, and we're doing the best we can with it, and we'll continue to, but we need more people. We need more treatment in our community. When we're at court with people and we're holding them accountable and saying, look, you can choose this option that Aliena's offering you, which might be a sentence that's very, very harsh, or you can go to treatment right now, but the treatment isn't for a couple weeks. That option is really hard. We need treatment options that are available immediately for people, and that's something that's really not available to us in our community. We also need more housing. So 10 to 15% of our folks that we're working with right now are unhoused. And when they come to us without housing, it's really hard for us to talk with them about getting better and holding them accountable. So those are the 3 things that, as we see it, we really could use. We need more people to do this work. We need more treatment options, and housing is really important. So I really thank you for your time and for all of your effort. This shows you how much you love this community. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Assistant Judge Dave Iacovone. You'll go
Do you want
next.
to go up there, or do you want to stand here?
God, I'll stay here.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be brief. My mother taught me a long time ago. She said, remember, Dave, when you point your finger at someone, the others are pointing back at you. I'm not about blame, and I don't think most of the people in this room are. In fact, I'm very grateful for everyone on this panel. I know you care deeply about this community, and you work very, very hard. But as I've been listening tonight, and much of the challenges seem to be around the internal processes of bail and conditions, etc. Could any of you share with us tonight what you believe the primary root causes are that drive literally hundreds of people across the transom that are part of the incidents that you deal with? We can have mandatory sentencing, we can have all kinds of things, but until people find it in their hearts not to do bad things, we'll always need more workers, we'll always need more prisons, we'll always need more police. How do we get upstream? How do we get ahead of this so that people don't do bad things? Thank you.
That's a great question. Anybody want to take a shot? I was going to say one of the.
I love talking about prevention because it's near and dear to my heart as a parent, as a coach, and as a physician. We have incredible resources in our community, but so many of these things have to do with resiliency factors and making sure that teens know that they're cared for, that there's somebody out there that cares about them is one of the most important resiliency factors in teens. Screening for and treating mental health, and we get back to the important need for better funding for mental health care, and I think that's a top priority. And also role modeling. It's really important that our communities do their best in terms of role modeling behaviors that they expect in their kids, and that's not talked about enough. So prevention is really key, and I like what you said, Dave. Thank you.
I'll just say two things. And Heather kind of mentioned it already, but when we do deal with somebody that's a substance abuse disorder user, sometimes it's 2 weeks before they can get into a facility, and we really need a place such as some type of acute detox emergency facility where we could place them immediately, because 2 weeks is too long and they will immediately change their minds. That's what I have for that.
Now I'm being a hog. Now I'm being a hog.
This is important.
One thing that's really important is that the outpatient model that was established and paid for by Blueprint for Health has better statistics for recovery than an inpatient model in many cases. It's always a really good place to start. So this was a study done by Richard Roston at UVM. It's been looked at, and our outcomes, especially for opiate use disorders, are incredibly, incredibly good. And people, like I said, a lot of times there are barriers to going to treatment. It takes them out of their community and their workplace and their families. So it's always a good idea, and I think we are going to connect. We've been sort of having this conversation, like why aren't we starting with that option for many people and making it court mandated? It's absolutely fine to do that.
If we don't hold people accountable, this is going to continue. If people that want to break the law for the very first time are held accountable, perhaps they won't continue. But if nothing happens to them, then it's going to continue.
Okay. I think we have, anybody else want to add anything on that one? Okay, we have two more questions. We have a gentleman here, and then we had one behind. We have 7 minutes left.
Yes, Bob Bortree. I live here in Morrisville. I would echo the comments of the gentleman that spoke before me. I fail to understand how we got to this point. I look back when I grew up through the years, there was rule of law, there was respect for each other. Where did it go? How did we get to this point where I see it on a daily basis, and I'm not talking about drug use, I'm talking about on the highway. The disregard for just civil respect for each other and caring about each other. It's just disappeared. And I can think back even 4 years ago, I don't remember our community being like this. And I fail to think that it's a few bad apples that are causing this problem. I think it's a systemic way that we've begun to treat each other, and our disrespect and our inability to follow the rule of law, be a good person, be an honest citizen, help each other, be kind. Where did it go? Can anybody address that? When did this begin to permeate our community? And how do we get out of it? Each one of us needs to be a kind and good person. I see it every single day in my car, on my bicycle. And it's not the drug, it's just this nastiness and this disregard for any kind of rules, laws, anything. Just there you go. That's, you know, and so maybe someone could enlighten me and the community here. When did this begin, and what is your feeling as to how we got there? Thank you.
Does anybody want to take a crack, or are we going to leave that for everybody to take an introspective look on what you do for your community? Thank you.
David Heller, Morrisville resident. I'd like to start off by saying thank you all for putting this together. It's obvious that I'm echoing some other people's sentiments, and that we're all here because of a love of our community. And I do appreciate the fact that a diverse group of people have come together to express that love for community and try and do something in a team effort, because that's what it's gonna take, all of us with a team effort to solve some very challenging problems. Certainly, the problem is the quality of life, and in my short lifetime, I've seen a huge degrade or lack of quality from when I was a kid to the time that I became a parent and trying to raise kids in this community. So it's important, and I'm probably going to echo Dave Iacovoni's sentiment about the source of some of our problem here. It's a matter of the heart, and I have read that a source of that problem that we're up against, the lack of rule of law or the respect for the rule of law, it's a matter of the heart. And lawlessness, which is something that we're dealing with, is the result of the love of men's hearts growing cold. And again, I'd like to applaud and thank the people that have shown up here tonight. It's obvious that the love of your hearts for this community has not grown cold. I do want to acknowledge the team effort that has gone on here in this community. I know it's not a small accomplishment to have rebuilt the police force. Kudos to the police department in Morrisville for maintaining and a strong presence in our community. That is certainly one of the tools that we need in our toolbox. I've got two questions. It's about law, and forgive me my not understanding it very well. Perhaps another tool in the toolbox is this: can the laws be changed to make the misdemeanors cumulative, and it now becomes a felony? And then the second question would be, I think our representative, Avram, you said that some of our criminals or violators of the law don't have money for bail, and some do. Well, why not the criminals that do have money be required to pay for those who don't?
The answer to your question, the first part of your question is, that's exactly the conversation that's going on in the two judiciary committees right now. And it's the time for people like yourselves to write people on the judiciary committee and push those issues along to make sure they get acted upon.
Representative Patt.
Yeah, thank you. I think there, in this discussion, and what I want to repeat something I said at the very beginning. When people here are talking with such feeling about what is happening to our community, I know that the same discussion and the same questions are being asked in communities, not just across Vermont, but much further and across much of our country. So there are some underlying things that I mentioned at the beginning, including the increase and the changes in drug use and drug marketing and manufacturing. That's one big one, but not the only one. So there were two questions here. One is, what can we do on the preventative side? It has to be done locally and by community, but these are statewide and national issues that when we ask ourselves what has changed, it's not just what has changed in our community, it's what has changed beyond our community that we share with other communities. The second question is much more specific, and that is law enforcement and the courts. And when something happens, are we taking the right actions, and can we? And if there are places where we're not, what can we do to correct that? What are the obstacles in the court system, or funding, or any of that? That's to me, that's what do we do when something happens, when someone commits a crime, whether it's a misdemeanor or a much more, serious crime with violence and property destruction. That we can actually be sure that works, that it gets enforced, and that people aren't getting off without repercussion. But I want to emphasize again that we are talking about, as I see it, the underlying issues that get to the prevention side of this are very widespread in our society right now.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna,
Can I, real quick?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to a couple of things because a lot of the folks that we're talking about are people in our community. They are members of our community. I know some of the names because I grew up with them. It's not so much of people coming out of the community and coming in and committing crimes. These are people that we know. And so to get to how do we prevent things and it being a matter of the heart, be better humans. Where did this start? It started with hate, it started with division, it started with people othering other people and people feeling less than. It starts with our youth in the schools. I don't know if y'all are aware of the things that are happening. And then those children grow up to be adults that perpetuate the same behaviors. So where does it start? It starts at home. It starts with being a good human. And it starts with just trying to make sure people are being better people, starting with yourself and in your home. And I heard someone say something about parents. Parents have to be okay so that the children can be okay, and the children have to be okay so that the parents are okay, because if everybody's struggling, nobody's okay, and that's how we keep getting in these cycles of problems. So it's up to all of us to just be better humans and take care of our neighbors and take care of each other so that we can have a better and safer community.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to close this down. Our discussion tonight was focused and refined for a purpose. We need to do the best that we can as a community to bring our concerns forward to the people. And I think we all know who they are now. There's no quizzes, but I think we know what we need to do. Please participate. Participate. And I can't say it better, is be a good human. All right, do your part and have the will to do your best. And really appreciate you coming out here. Thank you to the panel for taking your time, each and every one of you. It means a lot to us. We are available. Thank you for pointing out that we are busy, but we will do the best we can to hear what you have to say and act on that. So I'm very fortunate, personal note, to be here in Morristown now working with you, and I appreciate everything about this community. And I bet that's the sentiments of everybody here. So everybody, thank you very much, and I think it's a success.